Welcome back to Mrs. P What Is for Tea. Now, I showed in one of my videos me putting my sourdough bread into the oven, and had lots of comments asking me to show how I make it. So this is how I start it. So this is my sourdough starter, my established sourdough starter, and I've had this since July. Took it out the fridge last night. And it is, can you see, quite bubbly, and that's just coming up to room temperature. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed my starter because I want to make 2 lots of bread and I want to make rolls. So I'm going to add 50 grams of this sort of mother starter into a glass bowl, and I am weighing it. 52, not a bad try at all. I always use a glass bowl. I've got absolutely no idea why I use a glass bowl, but I do. So I'm going to pop my scale back to 0. I'm going to add 120 mils or 120 grams weight of water. 111, oh, not bad. 150, 120. I'm using Highland Spring bottled water because our water here has got a lot of chlorine in it, and chlorine just kills the yeast in your sourdough starter. Now to that I am going to add bread flour. I use bread flour. There's no reason why you should use bread flour. You can use any flour, but I've always used bread flour, so that's what I use. So to the 50 grams of starter, 120 grams of water, I'm going to add 120 grams of bread flour. There we go, 66, 105, 118. So that's 120. So I've got 50 grams of my mother starter. This bowl's quite warm, actually. It's just out of the dishwasher. It's just finished. Now I'm going to mix these together. And I'm using one of these dough whisks. To be honest, a wooden spoon does just as well. But I just happened to pick this up, so that's what I'm using. So, just make sure that it's thoroughly mixed. You might still have some lumps and bumps. I'm not that fussy. So you see now, that's what I've got. So it's sort of, I don't know, thick pancake maybe. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this to stand. I'm going to pop it on top of the agate. The agate is not on. I'm just going to put it on actually because the sun's shining. So I've got panels, so I'm on 0 electric. So I'm going to turn the agate on, sit it on top covered, and I'm going to allow that to bubble. And it should almost double in size, and then it'll be ready for me to use for my recipes. So this is it's all about timing, and I'm not very good at it. So you have to feed your starter, allow it to bubble. Then for the bread, we'll see that next. So this is now, it's 10 o'clock. I've been up to my daughter's. I'm puppy sitting, so I've been up there for an hour or so. So I'm going to cover this, leave it to start bubbling, and then we'll come back and show you the next stage. Welcome back to Mrs. P What Is for Tea. Just grabbing my whisk. This has been sitting for about, I don't know, hour and a half. Can you see it starting to bubble? So starter's been fed and it's starting to form bubbles, so the yeast is waking up. So I'm going to leave that a bit longer. But we need to add the flour and the water together and let it sit for half an hour, because flour takes a long time to absorb all the water. So pop this on. So I use a recipe from Farmhouse on Boone. I really like her. Lisa, her name is. And it calls, so this is plain flour. It calls for 500 grams of plain flour. Oh, I might just about make it. Oh, too much. Let me just get a spoon and take a little bit out. So 500 grams of plain flour. Then I pop the scale back to 0. Wholemeal flour, it takes 200 grams. So this is wholemeal flour. Right, we're at 167. Let's just add the last bit a bit at a time. 186. There we go. 202, but we'll call that good. And then I have got my bread flour, 250 grams of bread flour. So altogether, you've got 950 grams of flour. So 250 of the bread flour. So let's just see where we are with that. 214, so let me just add the last bit. There we go, 250 grams. I'm just going to give them a little combine. This does need a big bowl to get it all mixed. Now to that, put it back to 0, to that we're going to add 650 grams of water. I'm using bottled water, so the water's got a lot of chlorine in it. So what have we got there? That's 470. Just adding a bit more up to 650. There we go. Now, I am going to just move my scale out the way, and I'm just going to combine these together. It's going to make a proper, well, quite a messy. You're just trying to get the water into the flour. As I say, flour does not absorb water straight away. You need to leave it to stand. So just combining that in, flour in the water, 3 different types of flour. So we had bread, we had wholemeal, and we had plain or all-purpose, as they call it in the States. We call it plain flour here. It does recommend unbleached flour. In the UK, none of our flour is bleached. It's not allowed. It's against the law. You cannot bleach flour. So it can be, in the UK, it can be any plain flour, any bread flour, any wholemeal flour, because they are all unbleached. I think in the States you need to look for unbleached, for it to be labelled unbleached. So I've just mixed that all together, and it is very, well, it's not really combined. I've just tried to get all the wet flour into the dampness. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to leave it for a minimum of half an hour. I normally leave it much longer than that. So I do this bit sometimes at lunchtime when I come home, and do the rest after work. So I'm just going to cover this up with the tea towel and leave it. This process is called autolyse maybe, and it's just allowing the flour to absorb in the water. So we'll be back shortly when we're going to add the starter and the salt, and that's it. Flour, water, sourdough starter and salt, and that's how you make bread. It's absolutely amazing. So we'll cover that up and we're going to leave that. Let me just grab a flour sack. So I'm just going to cover that up. I'm going to leave it and we'll be back with you shortly. Well, welcome back, and this is where we are. My starter has bubbled. Lovely. I'm going to this, as you see, it's now absorbed the water, the flour's absorbed the water. So to this I'm going to add 20 grams of salt. Scatter that on the top. Then I'm going to pop my bowl back on, zero it out, and we need 200 grams of starter. It's going to be nearly all of this. There we go. So I will feed that, although there's literally scrapings left. I'll feed that now. I'll feed that once I've mixed this in, and that will make the starter to do my rolls. So, this is an odd sensation, I have to say. I've taken off my ring. Just going to take off my watch. And what you have to do is dimple it in. So you kind of just, you're not in any way kneading the dough, but you're just sort of incorporating it all together. So you just sort of dimple it through. It's a really odd sensation. I don't normally do anything like this with my hands, but you just get it all incorporated in. Bring it up, turn it over. Bring it up, turn it over. You just really want to mix it all through more than anything. So you're going to do this for about 5 minutes or until it feels as if it's all mixed through. Scrape your hands off. Carry on again. Don't want to be too rough with it, but you don't want any dry patches in the middle. So just, as I say, incorporating it all together. The flour and the water mixture with the starter and the salt. So it's more sort of folding it all together just to, as I say, incorporate it. Takes about, I don't know, about 3 to 5 minutes. I just tend to sort of pull it and cross it over. And just, you can see that it's damp and it's sort of an untidy dough at the moment. It's not really come together, but it will as we proceed with the stretch and folds shortly. But what I'm going to do, I kind of feel that's well incorporated now, is once again I'm going to cover this and I'm going to give it 15 minutes and then we'll do our first stretch and fold. So back with you shortly. While that's sitting, I'm going to feed what's left of this starter. I know it only looks like a bit of scrapings, but this can live again. So to that, I am going to add some bread flour and some water. Let me just pop this on the scale and zero it out. Lovely. So bread flour, I added 166 grams. Just get all that good started off the sides. That's actually, that will, believe it or not, that will grow into another, that will grow into more starter. To that I'm going to add about 150 mils of water. Yep, there we go. Mix it up. So that we've all that live starter off the sides. And believe it or not, just that tiny bit will combine with this. We're feeding it, what we're doing is we're feeding the starter, giving it lots and lots of food, and that will combine, and that will give that a few hours, and that'll be ready to bake with. So I'm just going to cover that one up also, and just leave that for the moment. The bread that we're doing, 15 minutes, we're going to leave that. This I'm going to pop on top of the agar. The ovens are on the hot plate, it's not just nice and warm there, so be back to you in about 10-15 minutes. Right, so that's sat for 15 minutes, and we're going to start what Farmer House and Boons Lisa calls stretch and fold. So I've got a bowl of really cold water here to dip my hand in, and you lift the dough up, drop it down, turn it a quarter turn, lift it up, drop it down, so you're stretching it, and this helps form the gluten strands that make it bread. So stretch and fold. You're trying to change it from the sort of, I don't know, unkempt dough into something that's smooth. So you stretch it up as much as it will and fold it down. Then we're going to let it rest for another 15 minutes and do it all again. So there we go. Just going to pop the towel over, and we'll let that rest for 15 minutes, and then we'll do it all again. I'm sorry, you might hear my washing machine spinning in the background. Mr. P's home, so his washing's on. So, another 15 minutes. Stretch and fold. I'm just wetting my hand because it is quite sticky, and the water stops it sticking to your hand. All the way round. Stretch and fold. The dough is sort of getting smoother each time, but it does need that little rest in between. It's starting to come together beautifully now. Stretch and fold. So that once again is us. I'm going to leave it for another 15 minutes, then do the third of our stretch and folds, and to put its hat on. I'll be back with you shortly. So that's 15 minutes, and I'm just going to wet my hand again. It's definitely starting to feel different. You just work your way round, just turning it a quarter turn every time. As you go on, you don't have to wet your hand quite as much. because it's losing some of its stickiness. So this time I've done 3 stretch and folds 15 minutes apart. So I'm going to leave it now for half an hour. And what we're going to do is 3 half an hour apart. So it does take, sourdough takes time rather than effort. So I'm just going to leave this for half an hour and we'll come back and see how it is when it's rested for half an hour. So this is the first one. First stretch and fold after half an hour. It is absolutely so much smoother. It's not as sticky. I did wet my hand. And you see how it is stretching up quite high. You don't want to overwork it, so you really need to be quite gentle with it. That is now a lovely smooth dough. It feels beautiful. Now she does propose another 2 stretch and folds after half an hour, but I think that another one after this, and this is going to be ready to stand. So I'm going to give it half an hour, do another stretch and fold and see what we think. So we'll be back with you shortly. So welcome back, that's had half an hour. So I'm just going to do, this will be the 5th stretch and fold. And I think actually this time, this could well be the last, because it is lovely and smooth. So that is going to be our last stretch and fold. Got beautiful smooth dough. And now we're going to leave it to double in size. So it's just a case of just leaving that to double in size. Then we'll put it into the baskets and into the fridge overnight. So that's it. I'm going to pop it on top of the haga. The ring's not on, but the ovens are on. And just let that double up in size, and then we'll show you where we go from there. Okay, moving on almost to the last stage now. As I say, it's not very hands-on, but it just takes a lot of time. So my dough has doubled in size. So I'm going to take it, I'm just going to put some flour on this mat. I don't know whether I got this from TikTok or Temu, something like that. So out comes the dough. Pop it onto a flour surface. There we go. And I'm just going to half it. Oh, no, where's that? Just put a little bit of flour on the top just to make it easier to handle. Just half it because it makes 2 loaves. Put one aside. I'm just going to work with one. What I'm going to do is I'm just pulling it into the middle, because what I want to do is form a ball. I'm going to turn it over, and then you want to build tension on the top. So I'm pulling it against the surface to form tension in the top of the dough. So drag it, turn it, drag it. It just tightens up the top of the loaf, like so. I'm going to put it into one of these Banneton baskets. I'm just going to flour. Just like that. And I'm going to lift it, and you put it the smooth side down into the basket. I'm just going to shape the second one. Just flip that over. There we go. So once again, oh, can you see? Once again, I'm just pulling the dough from all sides, stretching it out and pulling it into the centre. That's just to tighten it into a ball. Then turning it over. Once again, pulling it, tucking it in, just to make the surface tighter. So pull and turn, tucking it under all the time. And second Banneton basket, flour that, and then you flip it. It goes into the basket, seam side up. A little bit of flour on the top of each one. And then I'm going to cover them. What I use to cover them is, I use these. They're actually shower caps. They're disposable shower caps. And I buy them by the 100, but it's so much easier than using foil or anything else, because they just go straight over the top. So easy. I think they're about £4 for 100, something like that. And that's it. These now will go in the fridge for at least 12 hours. They'll probably stay in the fridge now till maybe, I don't know. I mean, the longer the better. Certainly 12 hours, possibly 36. I will cook one fresh on Sunday for Mr. P for work, and I might bake one tomorrow. So that's us. We're at the stage now where it's going into the fridge for the long ferment. I'd expect it to rise slowly over the time it's in the fridge, and we'll be back tomorrow or Sunday to score it and bake it. So that is how I make my sourdough bread. It's not terribly hands-on, but it's timing, because you've got to feed your starter, let it rise, add the water to your flour, let that autolyse, let that mature for about 30 minutes. The stretching folds, 3 at 15-minute intervals, and then 2 or 3 at 30-minute intervals. Allow it to stand and double. Shape it into the Banneton baskets, then into the fridge for the long ferment. So this is a recipe from Lisa at Farmhouse on Boone. She is by far, I have found, by far the best person to watch if you want to learn sourdough. She just makes it so easy. So we'll be back with you when we shape and bake these loaves. Welcome back to Mrs. P What Is For Tea. On the final part of our sourdough bread. And this has been in the fridge for 48 hours, just over. Just getting a bit of parchment paper. slightly wrong there. There we go. It's a bit longer than I would normally like, but it's just how it was. My Le Creuset Dutch oven, whatever you like to call it, is actually in the baking oven. So that has been in there for about 40 minutes. That will be piping hot. So I'm going to turn this out. It hasn't risen as much as I would like, if I'm honest. Not at all. Then I'm going to use a razor blade to score it. And you need to make this score really, really deep so that it can open up. There we go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Dutch oven out of the, my Le Creuset Dutch oven, whatever you like to call it, out of the roasting oven. Been in there, as I say, 40 minutes. I'm sorry, my ruggable mat's been absolutely bogging. So this is absolutely piping hot, as you'll see when I take the lid off. Remove that so you can see. Now it's got some, what's the flour called that's in the bottom? Some cornmeal in the bottom, and that is just to stop the bread itself from burning. So I'm putting it in using the parchment paper into the Dutch oven for Creuset. I'm going to bob the lid on and I'm going to put it in the oven for 20 minutes with the lid on. Then we'll come back in 20 minutes and see where we are. So that's had 20 minutes in the roasting oven. So you have to get your oven as hot as you can. It says 500 degrees on Farmhouse on Boone's website. So I think that's about 240, so really as hot as you can get it. Oh, it's heavy. Out it comes. And as you can see, it has grown. So it's going to go back into the oven for another 20 minutes just to brown, and then we'll see the finished article. So that's had 20 minutes with the lid off. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's beautiful. Now, I'm not going to cut into it because this is for my sister-in-law. I'm going to drop it off today, but let me just lift it out so you can see it properly. There we go. Sourdough bread. What do you think? It's not a very hands-on process, but it's a long process. There's a lot of stages. But there we go. So thank you very much for joining me on this extremely long journey to a sourdough loaf for my wee sister-in-law, and I shall drop that off today. I'd love you to click the subscribe button and join the family. I think we're about 630 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. And we'll be back on Friday with Meals of the Week.